For the next 30 minutes, I want you to join me in thinking and discussing what we really want from artistic AI. Sure, in cinema and architecture, design, and all our creative fields, AI has been helping us by automating routine tasks in visible and many invisible ways. But that's not all. We probably have more ambitious desires. Let's figure out what we are. So I assume that many of you have heard of a famous Turing test to distinguish whether computers have become as intelligent as we are. In the original version of this test, there's a human examiner, human judge. She's sitting in one room. The second room has a human being who is communicating to her. And then the third room has a computer which is also communicating to the judge. And the goal of both a human and a computer is to convince the examiner that we're both humans. So if by the end of the test the human judge thinks that both of them are humans, it means that the computer has passed the Turing test. So what will be the equivalent of a Turing test for artificial intelligence where it can create new music, architecture, films, TV drama series, and so on? I mean, it looks like a simple question, and we can answer it. If AI creator can automatically generate new works in a given media genre, and we can't distinguish between these AI works and the ones created by a human, a computer has passed the Turing test. Now, in many discussions today about artificial intelligence and artistic creativity, the kind of same or similar answer is quite common. For example, a very well-known academic researcher in the field of computational creativity, Margaret Boden, has proposed the following criteria for such a test. A program has to produce artworks that are indistinguishable from ones produced by human and or seen by humans as having as much aesthetic values as we can produce. Now, furthermore, between 2015 and 2018, a group of academic researchers at Dartmouth College run every year a competition which we call Turing Test in the Creative Arts to test, I quote, if machines are capable of generating sonnets, short stories, or dance music, but is indistinguishable from human-generated works. Now, the same understanding of Turing test for the art is used in many papers today published in academic journals about the latest art-generating computer system. But in fact, the first such paper was already published in 1966. A young researcher, Michael Knoll, published a paper in Psychology Journal in 1966 reporting on his experiments. I quote, a digital computer and a microfilm plotter were used to produce a semi-random picture similar in composition to Piet Mondrian painting Composition with Lines, 1917. Reproductions of both pictures were often presented to 100 human subjects. Those tasks were to identify the computer picture and to indicate the picture they preferred. Knoll reports that only 28% of the subjects were able to correctly identify the computer-generated picture. In other words, only 1/3 of human subjects saw, okay, this is real Mondrian and this is computer. And 60% of subjects preferred the computer-generated picture. So are we now done with answering our initial question about Turing test for the arts? Not quite. If we think further, we realize that the question is quite complex. To start answering it, we may need to consider ideas from a number of fields such as philosophical aesthetics, experimental psychology of the arts, the histories of art, music, design, architecture, cinema, literature, and so on, and also media theory, digital culture, and software studies. So I think that in particular the last three fields or research areas, the study of digital culture, the study of creative software, and the study of digital culture in relation to history of media haven't really been used to answer this question, what kind of test will be equivalent of Turing test for the arts. And that's what I want to focus on. First of all, so we need to consider that today all media design and most art creation takes place in a digital environment. It involves the use of software apps, services, and resources. The creators can instantly access numerous works made by others via social media networks and also specialized sites for sharing art, photography, video, music, architecture designs, and so on. I mean, the names of the sites are DeviantArt, ArtStation, Behance, SoundCloud, and many others. We also have instant access to stock media and templates. But that's not all. We can watch how other creators accomplish particular tasks and access for a particular media file directly from the application. So for example, not such a long time ago, Adobe introduced a new function in Photoshop. So there's a button, you press this button, and it takes you immediately to such videos where you see other creators doing particular things, but you can also access images created in these demos with all the modification layers. So you see how somebody creates something, and when you get this person project files. Now we can also quickly match the looks of other creators we like in their own works via functions of such application. For example, matching the colors and tones of another photo in Photoshop. And since so much creative work now involves coding, you also can copy and modify somebody else's code, for example by programming in JavaScript, processing, Python, or any other language. And that's not all. Today creators have technologies that can create many visual, sonic, spatial, multimedia, interactive effects not possible with earlier arts and media technologies. So examples would be use of projection mapping for video in space, use of particle system for animation, use of robotics and performance installation, and of course numerous new materials used in design and architecture. And when creators today use all the technologies, these technologies today are qualitatively different from their earlier versions. Think for example of capturing video on your phone at 8K resolution, which is about 40 times higher than the resolution of films 100 years ago. And of course we need to consider the new scale of art, media, design creation today, with billions of creative works are created every year. And Google said that in 2017 Google Photos was already storing 1 trillion images, but now 1 trillion images is being added every day. So this new digital environment poses questions that need to be considered in defining Turing tests for what we can call creating machines. Here are some of these questions. What does it mean to create today when endless stock media, templates, filters, effects, and tutorials are available to both casual and professional creators? Is it enough to simulate this contemporary digital creativity? So do we also want AI to have access to all the stock media? Or do we want to match human artistic achievements in creation process of pre-digital, pre-software, pre-network era? Another question. Do we want for our test AI that can generate new works from scratch while only having access to examples of works from a particular historical period, place, type of media genre? For example, only modernist abstract paintings from 1910 to 1930, or only kind of postmodern architecture from 1980s, or can have access to all digitized human cultural heritage? I want to note that today's supervised machine learning, which uses neural nets, typically is fed very specific databases of existing cultural examples for learning, so it's the first situation. Maybe this AI can also use all affordances of digital cultural environments like all human creators. It can watch other creators create certain works, it can copy their code and so on. In other words, do we want to simulate the artists of 21st, 20th or 19th century because they are fundamentally different? Now, do we want to consider for our test AI that can create complete work from beginning to end, or what about AI assistants? Today, the terms like AI assistants and augmentation are often used to refer to AI, which augments human creative process, which has basically became the norm. Right? I mean, every time you start using some creative software, you encounter lots of examples of this creative assistants. For example, auto enhancements of photos in Lightroom, Apple Photos, Google Photos, other software. Automatic selection of human face, figure of objects in photos and videos, so the background can be edited separately. I mean, you can do it both in your phone and also in software like Photoshop and Premiere. If you go to Lightroom, which is a popular software for organizing images, and select particular folder, Lightroom can select photos which it thinks are best. Our applications simulate camera movement and parallax using single photos. You can animate a single photo. You can automatically rearrange and edit design elements to generate new layouts in programs like Adobe Spark and so on. In the original human Turing scenario, a human is having a conversation with another entity she can't see, or other two entities. Right? Both entities can be human, and one of them can be a computer. Such test doesn't assume that this human has any particular expertise or professional knowledge and skill. While humans develop very sophisticated perception and cognition abilities, in making a computer that can have similar abilities was the original goal of AI research. In other words, researchers wanted AI to be able to do what all normal humans can do: understand information captured by various senses, generate grammatical and semantically meaningful sentences and longer text, understand what other humans are saying, employ basic logic reasoning, and make plans to achieve particular goals. And that's what we mean by human intelligence. Now, in psychology, linguistics, and cognitive science, researchers have been debating whether a particular human cognitive ability, such as language, has a biological or cultural origin. In other words, are we born with certain predisposition to learn language, universal grammar, or do we learn language from interaction with a particular environment and other people? This is a very important topic, but I will leave it for discussions another time. So if we want to compare AI creator and human creators, we can't simply invite any human, put this human in the room and say start creating. Even ask another human, the human judge, to judge if some works were created by this human or by a computer. Because we are not likely we are not born with already formed abilities to draw, compose music, write poetry, weave clothes with color patterns, carve human figures and face, or create interactive, intricate decorations and ornaments from many different materials. What we do know is that many individuals in every traditional human culture that emerged in the past, as far long as 7,000 years ago, were able to do all this quite well. Right? We were artisans, craftspeople, and later we call them artists. How has people arrived at the skills and why this happened in every traditional culture is actually fascinating and very relevant question. So what this means is that AI creator is not simulating standard universal human cognitive abilities. Instead, it needs to simulate something that some people learn in different ways, via imitation of examples we see, or formal training, or following online tutorials today, or working in a master's workshop, or in other ways. Now, many people are able to easily acquire some cultural skills such as dancing. Everybody can dance a little bit. With proper training, we can also learn some drawing, singing, and rhetorical skills. Everybody can draw a little bit, but not everybody becomes Rembrandt. So is this the level of creative skills we want machine to simulate, which is a kind of basic creative skills which most people can learn? Or do we want it to compete with arts professionals? But how do we decide who's a professional? That's actually not a very simple question today. Do we select all people who studied for years in university or art schools and received a diploma, or only people who received certain amount of recognition in their fields? But recognition may depend on many factors, and contemporary art world is a perfect example. It doesn't necessarily correlate with talents and art skills. It depends on lots of social and economic factors. And now, what about much larger groups of creators who don't have any formal arts, who share their creations online and receive significant recognition from online audiences for their creative works in the forms of likes, shares, comments, appreciations, and so on? Because the people who have more such signs of appreciations are the most skilled professionals today, and AI needs to compete with them. The similar question also applies to people who had serious art training in making living as photographers, film editors, songwriters, architects, web designers, which is now a definition of professional, right? You have a degree and you're making a living by working in a particular creative field. Websites such as Behance feature millions of creative projects in dozens of fields by such professionals. So we can ask, do projects with most likes represent the highest possible achievement in a given field? Or shall we use words which receive awards from top international competitions such as film festivals or annual best awards which exist in many fields? But since we now have tens of millions of professional creators generating billions of works every year, we can be certain that awards is not a good criteria, because only people or groups that enter competitions are judged, and the cost of entry already can prohibit many people from applying. So once again, we see that the amazing increase in scale of culture generates all kinds of questions which complicate the idea of artistic AI test. In the 21st century, the numbers of art professionals, regardless of how you define them, increased many times. These professionals have lots of mechanisms and platforms for sharing their work and receiving appreciation. I think no single evaluation mechanism available today, be it likes, awards and competitions, judgments of a professional, Pulitzer Prizes, Academy Awards, or academic experts, none of this competition can consider enough works and be sufficiently objective. So we basically don't know what the best art design architecture is today. So if we want AI creator to compete with the best creative works made today, it's very challenging to define what is best. Okay, so let's try another approach. What if we limit creative AI, Turing test, or creative AI tests, only to masterpieces of the past, i.e. works that today we consider the best in human cultural history? But this is also somewhat arbitrary. Scholars who study the canons in the arts, that is the authors and works from the past, thought to represent the highest artistic achievement of humanity, show us how these canons change significantly over time. So at a particular moment, one artist was not considered to be important, and a century later this artist now is discussed as one of the top human geniuses. The same thing happens to basic concepts of European cultural history such as Middle Ages or Baroque. And they are good examples of how our evaluation of past cultures can change dramatically over time. Another good example of a gradual development of a small canon of best works is what happened to 19th century Impressionist artists who in the 1870s and 1880s created about 13,000 pastels in paintings, and today only 113 of these works appear in all the textbooks, and what works appear change over time. Now, I'm not trying to depress you. I definitely don't want to depress developers of AI creative tools. On the contrary, I want to help the advancement of AI for design, media, and the arts. But what I think is that understanding nuances, meanings, and also historical changes in the concepts such as creativity, artist, professional, masterpiece, expert judgments, or canon is very important if we want to create better creative AI. These terms are not neutral or universal, we're culturally constructed. So we shouldn't take for granted particular judgments, canons, or understanding of these concepts which are commonplace today. Doing this would be equivalent of only simulating very selective and narrow examples of human cognition when claiming that we have simulated all human universal cognitive abilities. While the Turing test idea is widely known, in a paper published in 2001, the authors proposed a different test for artificial intelligence. They called it Lovelace test, in honor of Ada Lovelace, the daughter of poet Byron, and the English mathematician who is known for her work with Charles Babbage analytical engine, right, the prototype of modern computer, and her insights that computers have much bigger potential with only calculation. She wrote, it's 19th century language, so listen carefully. Quote, supposing, for instance, that the fundamental relations of pitch sounds in the science of harmony and of musical composition were susceptible of such expressions and adaptations, that the engine might compose elaborate and scientific pieces of music of any degree of complexity or extent. In other words, even before digital computer was invented, she was dreaming about computers creating art. But at that time, it was not possible. So this is how the inventors of Loveless test summarize one of your arguments. This is their summary. Computers can't create anything. For creation requires minimally originating something, but computers originate nothing. They merely do what we order them via programs. So consequently, the idea of Loveless test was to say that we need AI to create original works and not only to imitate. To summarize, as we saw, the idea of a Turing test for artistic AI brings with it all kinds of questions and problems. But I haven't mentioned yet the biggest problem. Here it is. The problem is that computers used for art, design, architecture, film, music making passed this test already a long time ago. For example, already in 1966, when people preferred a computer-generated Mondrian drawing to real Mondrian in Michael Knoll experiments. It was 1966. Today, our computational media devices pass Turing tests successfully billions of times every day. Do you notice that over a period of about 7-8 years, maybe between 2012 and 2018, the quality of images captured by cameras and mobile phones improved dramatically? Now, partly it was due to the increase of sensor resolution and other hardware improvements, and also addition of multiple lenses to one phone, and partly it was due to the use of so-called AI, machine learning, by the camera. So when I look at the photos I captured with my phone in first part of 2010s, most of them unusable, out of focus, bad exposure, and so on. But by approximately 2020, it basically became impossible or very difficult to capture an usable photo. Your phone works every time. Practically in every situation, the photo has a perfect exposure, which means it has enough details in dark, medium, and light parts, and the main subject is in focus. Because professional cameras today don't have the same software as camera and phones, very often I really have to struggle with such camera to capture a decent picture, such as the camera used now to videotape what I'm saying across me. And even after trying for minutes different settings, it just doesn't work. Simply, it doesn't work. But when I shoot with my phone, almost all photos are usable. This means that every time I take a photo with my phone, it passes a Turing test. It does something which me or professional photographer can do with earlier technology. In fact, very often, the computer, right, inside the chip, right, inside the phone, performs much better than any human. Because I simply can't capture as many good photos with my less smart camera, right, the older camera, analog or digital, as I can do with my more smartphone camera of today. Now, I can add many other examples, but I think these two examples are sufficient. So we can say that between 1966 and today, computer devices that generate, edit, or capture media have passed Turing test endless number of times, and in fact they even perform better than any human. So ultimately, this is why using Turing tests for artistic AI simply does not work. We need a different test. So in conclusion of this short talk, I want to propose one possible new test for artistic AI. Here it goes. AI passes this test if it can create works which are hardly unlikely for any human to create, and which we still judge as meaningful, aesthetically satisfying, and original. So basically, the computer creates something which we think would be impossible for humans to create. Not technically, but because we'll never imagine such things, and yet these works are as meaningful to us as the works by humans. Now, this test also needs its own name. So I want to name this test in honor of Vera Molnar, a French artist who belonged to a very small group of people who pioneered computer art in the 1960s, when there were very few women, maybe 3 or 4, working in computer arts, and she was one of them. So why Molnar as opposed to somebody else from this group? The reason is that for me, her works exemplify the challenges, the delightful paradoxes, the surprises we encounter when we start thinking about a computer creating something artistic. Right? So as I said, Molnar is well known today as one of the early computer artists, but is it correct to call her a computer artist? I mean, she was born in 1924, studied art and started artistic practice already in the 1940s, and then started to make earliest work with computers as early in 1959. And these works are very similar to the drawings she was doing at the time with traditional media. So why we have a similarity? How did her computer art develop? Now, like most people working with computers in the 1960s to create visual art, she didn't have regular access to computers. There were very few of them, and they belonged to universities, military, or government. So for many years she was developing her aesthetic ideas in her notebooks. She was working out what she would do with a computer when she would have access to it, covering page after page of her notebooks with drawings representing systems, structures, tactics, and strategies. In fact, she invented a special name for her process. She called this machine imaginaire. And then, in the rare moments when she had access to a computer, her designs were executed by a plotter connected to the machine. To what extent the final result was the exact copy of what she worked out before in her head in the notebook, or did the actual use of programs in the plotter modify her ideas in some slight ways? I think that the ambiguity of terms computer artist and computer art, perfectly exemplified by her work, is very important and relevant for thinking about a possible test for artistic AI, whether it is AI creates art, architecture, film, and so on. This ambiguity should make us think more carefully about the concepts we use when we talk about artistic AI, or any other technology making art autonomously or with human participation. Thank you so much for your attention.